Hello, hello. Good morning. Bonjour. Hyvää huomenta. And good morning to all participants in this hybrid event. I welcome you all online and live to this webinar. Is reuse a solution for circular transition of textiles? The event is made possible by the Baltic 2Hand project, where I, Henna Knutila, work as a project manager on behalf of Turku University of Applied Sciences. The project is worth following on various social media channels. And on the Telaketju website. The main objective of the project, Baltic 2Hand, is to promote the life extension of textiles by developing reuse solutions. This is, of course, a topic we will also be discussing today. Finland's overshoot day in 2024 was on 12 April. Overuse is the root cause of both the loss of nature and climate change. We use natural resources beyond the limits of sustainability and produce goods from natural resources in a way that accelerates a global warming. How can we reduce the current harmful textile business models that contribute to overconsumption? And how can we extend the life and reuse of our products? What kind of regulation can we expect, and how will it serve the circular textile economy? What happens at the upstream end of textile production, and how does the development of recycling value chain affect this? And what does research and experimentations tells us? What is the role of consumers? These are the questions we hope to hear and discuss today. We have 6 experts presenting on these topics in this morning's session. Thank you in advance to all the speakers. Please remember to keep your microphones mute and use chat if you have any questions. We have limited time to answer all questions after the presentations, but the presenter can answer these questions in the chat afterwards. And now I would love to invite our first expert, Emilia Jedda, to take the floor. Please, Emilia.
Thank you. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. And then one more question. Will you have the presentation there, or should I present from my screen?
Yes, we are presenting, so go ahead.
Okay. Super. Thank you. Yes. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Emilia Jedda, and I represent the Finnish Textile and Fashion Association, where I work as Chief Advisor on Sustainability and Circular Economy. If we go to the next slide. So the topic of my presentation is that can future EU regulations support textile reuse and lifetime extension solutions? So we have a question here, and the aim is to maybe look into what is going on EU level, what kind of actions are taken on that level, but maybe also somehow try to discuss how the current market looks at the moment. But let's see how far we get on this one. But yes, if we move forward to the next slide. So just a brief presentation of Finnish Textile and Fashion, the organization that I represent. We are representing we are employers association. So we represent the textile and fashion employers here in Finland. We've been established for approximately 120 years ago. So we've been here for a long time, always working in close collaboration with the Finnish textile and fashion industry, the companies, and trying to, our main target has been to try to support the member companies throughout the time and in the issues and topics that are relevant in each current time. Yes, maybe just wanted to mention that the backbone of our organization is that we negotiate the collective agreements on the textile and fashion industry that all our member companies or have adopted. But beside of that, we also provide different kind of support, such as sustainability and circular economy support to our member companies. But advocacy is also one of the main issues that we work with. So we try to be a spokesperson for the Finnish textile industry, both here in Finland as well as on EU level. And therefore we also collaborate a lot here in Finland, but also then on an international level. But yes, maybe that was all about our association, and we can move forward to the EU textile strategy. And when we talk about that, can future EU regulations support textile reuse and lifetime extension? So we need to go back to the EU textile strategy. This is, as the name says, is a strategy, so it's the vision and the roadmap that the textile and fashion industry needs to take during the current during the next years. And the strategy includes different kinds of initiatives and actions that EU believes that will support the transition to circular economy in the textile and fashion industry. So here you see a lot of different kinds of legislative proposals that we have on the table. So here's 16 legislative proposals that are all impacting the textile and fashion industry in the EU at the moment. And the aim is that we have these legislative proposals are both on product level. When we talk about textile products, we have like different kind of legislative approaches that with the aim to tackle the somewhat problems on a product level. But here's also proposals that tackle the or aim to tackle the company level issues when we talk about sustainability or circular economy. Maybe some of these are really familiar, or you are really familiar with them, but I maybe want at this point highlight some of the legislative proposals that we have on the table, and those being the eco-design regulation, as well as the national tax on waste, also called extended producer responsibility. So if we move to the next slide, so we can see what kind of legislative approaches these are, and also like try to reflect how these proposals are going to support textile reuse and lifetime extensions. So eco-design regulation, actually, the EU Parliament voted on this one this week, 2 days ago, and it was adopted by the Parliament. Now we need to still wait for the Council's last decision that we will get in end of May, and then we don't talk about the proposal anymore. We talk about the regulation on that one. But the main idea behind the eco-design regulation is that it's a framework where we define binding product-specific eco-design requirements. So we set some kind of requirements on the product types that will be covered by the regulation. And textile products are among the first one that will be worked on this side. And we have the environmental sustainability requirements are at the core of the regulation, meaning that in the future there will be some kinds of minimum requirements regarding environmental sustainability, for example, on textile products. The regulation also include the digital product passport, and then the destruction of unsold or returned textiles, as well as reporting obligations on that one, and then also mandatory criteria for green public procurement. And the overall aim of the regulation is to increase textiles performance in terms of durability, reusability, and repairability. Of course, there's other angles as well, but these are at the core of the core of the regulation. And by increasing the durability, so we believe that consumers can use the clothing for a longer time. So we have more quality products on the market, and meaning also that the consumer can use them, but at the same time, when we have quality products on the market, so it means also that their lifetime can be extend, and also then this will foster circular business model such as reuse, renting, or repair services. So this is like one angle, even though we are working with textile specific requirements. So these requirements are there also to support the transition to circular economy. If we move to the next slide, we will go to the proposal on extended producer responsibility for textiles. So last summer, the EU Commission gave a proposal as part of the Waste Directive that we should build a extended producer responsibility scheme for textile. And when we talk about textile, I always only talk about textile, but actually this proposal includes clothing, accessories, and footwear. So not only like pure textile products. And the aim is that with the extended producer responsibility, it means that by that we get the polluter pay principle in force, and that means that the producer who can be who puts the product on the market will be also responsible for the lifetime impacts of the product. So meaning that the producer will also be responsible for the waste management, for example, for the textile product. And the aim of this proposal is to create an economy for collecting, sorting, reuse, and preparation for reuse and recycling of textile products, so that we actually can collect the textile waste that we have and also build the infrastructure to get the recycled fiber from that one. But there's this should follow the EU waste hierarchy, and there we had for example reuse before recycling. So we should follow the EU hierarchy on this one. This will also include incentives for producers and brands to focus on quality products. So this will try also, even though we are in the end of life stage of products, so this will have a role also in the design phase of new products. So by this proposal, the aim is to boost the preparation for reuse and repair activities and in the EU. And so here we also can see that these are like proposals, or this is a proposal also that aims to support the textile reuse as well as the lifetime extension of the products. But if we move forward to the next one, we will not talk anymore about different legislative proposals, because we also need other kinds of instruments in order to create a circular transition in the textile industry. So the Commission has also identified this one. So therefore we have a transition pathway for the textiles ecosystems. This is a program that aims to promote and support different kinds of resource efficient manufacturing processes. So we're talking about the upstream part of the textile value chain, but also support and promote the growth of circular economy business model, such as reuse and repair. And this means that we are hoping that there will be available funding in order to means of support, but also different kinds of guidelines and different kinds of ecosystems to promote this one. Then also the EU Commission is encouraging member states such as Finland, for example, to also adopt favorable taxation measures for the reuse and repair sector. So this is also a really important part that needs to be taken into account. And then also the EU Commission, as well as other stakeholders, needs to, as well as are planning to develop different kinds of guidance and guidelines on promoting circular business model. And this, I already mentioned the investments but also different kinds of guidance on this side. But then we have also identified that if we want to make a circular transition, we need also upgrading of skills. Different kinds of skills are needed. We need, and this should be supported on EU level as well as on national level. But yes, if we move to the last slide. So maybe I'm trying to summarize this. So we have a huge transformation ongoing in the textile and fashion industry. We can identify that we have a digital transition as well as the green transition, which include in our industry circular economy approach. And then we have the consumption transition that is also ongoing. And in order to actually find the measures that will support the transition, the circular transition in the textile industry, we need all of these aspects need to be in line and needs to move forward. And when we look into the EU textile strategy, we can identify that there are measures in place on the digital side. We have the digital product passport that will be like a tool with which will also support different kinds of new circular business models to be developed. And then we have these kinds of requirements on the textile products and on the companies, how they should operate in the future. But we are still maybe missing the consumption transition. We can see that it's evolving and there's huge changes going on that side. But we can't see any support for example, from the EU textile strategy, how the consumption can, or how we support the consumer to make sustainable or mindful decisions in their own consumption patterns. And this is something that if we want to achieve a systemic change, so we need also to include the consumers in the change more efficiently. And therefore we see this as a bit challenging at the moment because only collaboration between the political decision makers, between the companies active in the industry, and between the consumers, that's the only way that we can actually achieve a broad transition that is really much needed at the moment. So we also need then to look into the current legislation and be critical about that is the current legislation that we have, is it actually supporting circular economy transition, or is it still based on the linear model that we are used to? And this kind of critical thinking we are trying to discuss more openly about with, for example, the political decision makers. But Yes, maybe I stop here, and I thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have those. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia, very much, and great summary of the presentation. Also, we need to involve consumers as well to the discussion, and thank you very much. And I think those questions and those discussion you already started, it will continue the other presentations. We now have Sini and Tantsida, and hope that now if you have any questions, please, you can use chat and ask them there. And Emilia, if you have any time, you can answer on the chat also. So let's continue discussion on there. So we will now start with the next presentation of Sini and Tantsida. Thank you, Emilia, very much. Sini and Tantsida, welcome. And you are here in Turku, live. You can take your chairs if you want more from here, so it's maybe easier for you. Yes. Yes. You want to stand? Yeah, you can come more here, more closer to me. And I can change the slides whenever you want to. Or then you, if you want to. The speaker is here. Yeah, you can. It's everywhere. Yeah, you can. Yes, please. Yes. So welcome here, Tantsida and Sini, and it's your time to now present yourself and the topic you are speaking about.
Thank you. Thank you. I can start. Myself, Tantsida, and I consider myself as an impact-driven sustainability professional. I do have work experience more than 11 years in textile industry. In production, I'm from Bangladesh. I mainly worked with H&M brand there in their sustainability team, and I actually led environmental and social programs on behalf of H&M sustainability team for Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Africa. And the programs are mainly connected with connected to water, climate, circularity, and chemical. And today, thanks to Henna and Sini, I'll be trying to share my experience connected to some insights from production, and we'll try to connect some dots in textile value chain with Sini. Thank you for having me.
And I'm Sini Ilmonen. I'm originally from here, from Turku. And I have worked in environmental issues about almost 20 years, first in environmental NGOs, and in Sitra in sustainable mining issues, and then in a waste management company. And there I started to work with textiles as well. We built up a national-wide collection and sorting system. And we also invested in a mechanical processing line. And currently I'm working in a chemical recycling side. So we have a technology that we can chemically recycle textile waste back to fiber. And in that position, I'm also building up a feedstock supply chains and looking for partners and trying to understand where the textile waste is, where they are going to, and how the system works. And on that position, I found Tantsida as well, and I'm happy to be here to share some of my experiences as well.
Great. And then you have numbers and countries here. Tantsida, please.
Yeah. So if it's just to give you a understanding about how globally textile is important. So if we consider textile industry, then actually they are one of the top growing industry in the in globally, and they ranked as the 7th most traded products, with a growth around 7% growth year on year. This data is from 2022. So they do have a growth in 2022, 7%, considering the 2021 they had. And textile solely actually contributing or trading around 941 billion USD worldwide. So it indicates that the text industry is actually growing, and it's a critical one to actually look for how they are working right now and what would be the future. So if we consider how the position of East Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, the business, how they are doing their textile. So it's a together with all the countries, they are contributing more than 25% in exports, in this industry, and that mainly led by Bangladesh and Vietnam. And yeah, so I think
Yeah, there is we let out China. So China itself contributing to export of the global market about 40-50%. So that's a huge market as well. And it looks a little bit silly. Like I was thinking how the numbers can be like that India is only 4.3%, but actually the internal market is so huge. There's so much people. So, and these numbers are export numbers. So I want to need to understand that perspective.
Yeah. And just zooming in, how Bangladesh is connected to textile. Being Bangladesh is one of the dense populated country in the world. Bangladesh as a Bangladesh economy is very much or strongly dependent on textile and garments export, as they are doing a business of export like 47 billion yearly, around like this, and they do have a target to even do more. Bangladesh has a large number of population, like 171 million people are staying there, and textile is a very labor intensive supply chain for the country. So many people are employed in this sector as well. 4 million actually people are directly or indirectly connected to this sector locally. And so parallelly, it also goes that as Bangladesh is high on textile production, the waste are also high on that part. So textile post-industrial fabric waste is really high for the country. It's like around, right now it's around 500,000 tons are producing every year there, but the capacity what they have to actually recycling, that is very low. So we'll talk it later on. But if we could manage these waste, only the cotton-based waste to retain as a recycling product, then the country could actually retain the retain USD $1 billion only from this recycling textile. So that's a very lucrative business from financial perspective for the country. So country is working on it, but the infrastructure is yet to be developed. So we'll talk about it. And I think Bangladesh textile is also contributing a lot in the country's greenhouse gas emission factors on the climate side. So stakeholders are also working on that, like brands. Yeah. So we'll talk also about.
And I have again a disclaimer. So because the textile waste data is not really collected like in a trustful way, that's also developing there. But like the 500,000 tons of textile waste, we are not very sure is that the correct number. In some studies, it's even 900,000 tons. So still where is the data, the trustful data? That's also something should be developed further.
And is the 100,000 tons, is it the post-industrial?
Yes.
Yes.
Only the post-industrial.
So not post-consumer.
Bangladesh is not actually working or not allowing post-consumer waste to be in the country. It's not legally possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So now what is happening within the waste? So maybe Tanzida, you want to dig in?
I can start, maybe you can. So about the current practices, how it is being handled, it's not that it's like whenever as Sini said, the data is might be some error or something, but considering that, we found that 5% of the wastage that is producing right now, post-industrial fabric waste, that is being actually arranged to back to yarn production again, but through recycling. And a good number of percentage is actually using as a fuel on site in the factory for their on site incineration, or some cases landfill also happening. So it's, the percentage comes around 35%, and there is like 60% of the wastage, the higher amount of wastage is actually exporting to some other countries like India, Hong Kong, and some other countries for their next step. So as local capacity is not available for the recycling, so those products are exporting to other countries for the recycling and for other purposes. And as I said, that no post-consumer waste is allowed in the country, because Bangladesh is yet to actually develop the infrastructure for the existing and available wastage, the post-industrial waste. And Bangladesh produces the wastage Bangladesh we are having right now. It's mainly the majority wastage are cotton-based waste, like 75% wastage are cotton-based waste. So there's a good amount of waste to be recycled. The technology is available, but the infrastructure is not there. And that is developing. And the main concern is that the waste handling sector that is available right now is very informal. And there is traceability, child labor, and current wages. Those are the risk factors that are currently actually involved with the current practices. So that is something our country is working to actually develop further. Yeah, you can add.
Yeah, I think that's a good cover. Yeah, some words about what Tansina said about the system. So the system is actually in place. The textile waste is collected, but there is two systems. It's a formal system, where the factory itself have a contract with the waste management company, and they go to what Tansina said. They might go to a landfill or export, or even they can use it in the boilers in the factories where they create electricity. They need lots of steam, for example, so those textiles are used for that. But then there's this orange line, that's the informal, and there might be a political interest and political groups who are ruling actually that, and on that way the money goes to the politicians' pockets and not for the community, not for developing the country or the infrastructure. And in many, I was talking with few factories, and actually if there is a formal waste handler, it might be that because there is a political power, they doesn't allow the factory to start using the formal way to handle the waste, because they can even close the factory because they have the political power. And what is thinking the recycler side, the 60% is going actually outside of the country of the good waste that could be recycled inside the country. So how to enter to this complex system, and with whom to play, and how to redirect the waste to recycling and upcycling solutions. And here you can see, and one thing I wanted to say as well is that when they are the collectors, so there's like 3 ways to get the waste. So you can go to the factory and trying to buy from there, but then you have to have the sorting system as well. Then you can buy from the waste collector. There is already one layer, and the waste collector might collect the waste from different factories. So the traceability and the transparency again already is like a little bit blurry. Or there's this informal way, and many times they bring the waste to big marketplaces, and then you go to buy bags of waste, and then there's no way you can trace where the waste came from. So these are kind of the 3 places you can buy the waste. Thanks. So you have something to add? Yeah.
So questions for both of you. So when working with the global market and with the global companies, and you really need to understand the circumstances of each country. So that was my questions, and I understand that they really need to understand, and this is a huge
The local
yeah.
relevance
Yes.
is very important to connect.
yeah.
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 And from the ministries, from the politician, the real actors in the field, mafia in some some cases. So there's so many different actors, and you have to understand with whom you can do the change.
Yeah.
Here are a few pictures from my travels. This is the formal place, so you can see what makes it formal. They have nice position to work. They have actually special table that they can. The dust is actually falling down through the table. They have masks, and they have actually, this place had a this kind of motivation system in place as well. So the table were competing to like they had a sorting target for the day, and if they reached the target, they got some like extra payment for that. And it wasn't only a speed, but the quality as well. And there is these bags that the companies buys from the marketplace or from the factories or even from the waste management companies. And the next pictures are from informal places. So they were usually places like this, size of like this, and it was packed of textiles, and there was just a small corner to really do the work. They were usually sitting on the floor. They had like small pile of textiles around them, and they did the sorting like that. And there are children on the workplace. They didn't work there, but because the company didn't offer a daycare, the women who are working there, they didn't have a place to put the children. So they were running around in a textile, in the working place. And that is happening also in the factories if the company is not responsible and offering the daycare for the employees.
So in Bangladesh, it is the company's role to do that, not the governmental role.
Not the government company. If there is a certain percentage of female are working in the company, then company is supposed to offer a daycare. But most of the factories like who are working with brand, like the formal ones, they do have daycare arrangement. So that's a common thing. But for informal, this is a question.
Yeah, good.
And quite often the collectors are very small, so you can't even, like there is just one truck or one man company who is collecting the waste. And then again, there is very many small companies who has only one hall to run, and that's the place. And there was like 10 or 20 halls next to each other, and each one of them were like a own company. So the brands are taking action.
Yeah. Bangladesh actually is very weak in terms of the enforcement of the legal expectations. So brands who are working in the country, they are really taking actions. And there is also some like it's vice versa. Like they do have also interest because they want their supply chain to be strong enough and transparent enough to be reported. So the reputational risk is one factor for what brands are very concerned, and they are working in the climate, circularity, and also on the social factors that eventually secure their business. And they also support, they want to actually support, they want their supply chain to support their environmental visions. So environmental causes like climate and circularity, those are very like now high level visions they have by 2030, 2040. So that's also another factor. I think the upcoming legislations, due diligence and voluntary disclosures, that's also another factor for them to work on these factors. And I think we just heard about the legal legislations which ones are coming from European Union. I think there's also a good interest from brands to work on this part. No problem. So I'll be sharing two examples from brands, like what they are doing in the industry. So one example is coming from a collaboration project. Like some brands are working with UNIDO, UNIDO with a fund of around like 2.3 million euro. That is providing to actually enable the supply chain of circularity. And there are two streams brands are working. One is they want to address the technological limitations for blended material recycling solutions. That will be textile to textile, and the other stream is working on the PET bottle to textile. That's the to secure the collection and sorting process to be transparent and fair enough to work on. And yeah, you want to add the PET bottle one?
Yeah, well, in European discussion, the PET bottles are not very high. We are not very fan of the recycling of PET bottles and
Into textiles.
yeah, into textiles. So that's not really in high consideration in Europe, but we are actually trying to get rid of it. But we need to understand the system we are working in, or the environment we are working in. So the PET bottles are all actually in the nature there. There was in the Dhaka area, there is no landfills. So people doesn't have place to put their waste. So usually there's actually rivers around the city and going along the city. So that's the only place to put your waste. So actually the PET bottles and the plastic should be collected from the nature and using for recycling.
Yeah, I think here Hannah's contextual local context is very much connected. We do have a separate way of doing things because and Europe has a different way because we don't have a better alternative than that. And the other example comes a very recent one. Brands like Bestseller and H&M, they actually teamed up for a collective investment on wind power project to support Bangladesh climate agenda, and with a very high capacity, like 500 megawatt wind project, and that would be the first ever large offshore wind power project for Bangladesh. And if everything is okay, then this project will be starting in 2028. And the partners, the project have been initiated by Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners from Denmark, and with the advocacy partner Global Fashion Agenda, GFA, and one local partner is also working. So this project already got the approval from the government, and I think they are working on a detailed feasibility study right now. So hopefully it will be starting in 2028. That will be very much helpful for Bangladesh to achieve their 40% renewable energy target by 2040.
So now we heard about recycling and also energy example. I take us to water. So in Bangladesh, there's some industrial areas that are actually using a lot of water. And we heard that the textile industry is one of the main industry in Bangladesh. Of course, agriculture is also a water user. But it's estimated there's a bars. So the lighter red bar is that how the groundwater will decline if the industry stays at it is now. But if it's growing as it estimated, the decline of the groundwater is 132 meters. The level of groundwater will be 132 meters too low when the zero is like the safe and sustainable level. And so each year the groundwater is declining 3 meters, and that's very, very alarming. And one reason is cultural. So water doesn't cost. You as a consumer or household or industry, you don't have to pay when you are using water. And they doesn't even have to understand how to respect the water use. So hopefully that will be changing in the future. And that's only the groundwater, as you have seen many pictures already, that there is a lot of trash nearby rivers, and also there is a dying factories. So all that water has gone to the rivers. There is a change also that, but few rivers I saw, it was actually black because the colors we are using in our textiles are going direct to the rivers. And next slide, we see when the manufacturers are actually taking the action. So, well, the growing cotton takes a lots of water, but actually there is no cotton plantations in Bangladesh, so they are importing all the cotton in. But there's dyeing houses, and it was about 1 kilo of dyed fabrics. Was it about 70 liters of water they use
For dyeing?
for dyeing, and then
Around 100, 200.
Oh, okay, so it was even higher. So it's about 100 liters of water when they are dyeing, and then they are dyed. Our jeans are dyed. Then we actually want that there's a little bit white there and there, so we wash the dyes out, and we maybe put some patterns and print them. So in that washing step, there's other 70 liters of water used per kilo of denim, for example. If thinking about pair of denim, it's about 40 liters per denim per jeans in one single step in the complex processing value chain. What the factories have done, they try to develop the technology there. So this factory I visited, they reduced the use of water in the washing step from 40 liters to 7 liters. So there is hope, but this, of course, it's slow. And they also build up the water treatment center. So here you see the water in the other chart. It's the water that come out from the factory and is normally put direct to the rivers. Now they are actually cleaning it and they can recycle the water. And that's actually quite common already, especially in the denim production all over the country. Thank you. Yeah. So we have heard it's a complex value chain and supply chain. So why this takes so long? We are talking about systemic change. Systemic change is holistic. You have to see the comprehensive system. So, for example, the legislation Emilia was talking about. If we change one legislation, how does it affect in Finland, in Europe, in whole globe? So we have to understand the system. And we as a recycler, if we come to Bangladesh and say, okay, we buy all your waste, it doesn't work. We have to understand the many complex value chains already in one country. And each Asian country, even in each European country, we are working differently. There's a different legislation. There are different actors involved. So how the best leverage points, how to find those that we make the change and the biggest effect. And if this is easy, then we have to understand the interactions between the matters as well. The corruption we mentioned, the child labor we mentioned. So there's a lots of challenges to face and meet, and then take the actions when going to developing countries, especially developing countries. I don't say the corruption is not in Europe, it is for sure. And the legislation and innovation is behind many times in developing countries. And even the legislation is there. There might be very good environmental goals and environmental protection legislation, but the enforcement is not placed. No one measures it, or no one really sees that the industry is implementing it. Or then there's a company who pays a little bit under the deck and they are okay, the report is clean and nice. You have something to add?
No, I think you covered.
And lack of external cost also. I mean, if you can use your water, there is no cost on that, then that's also a very big point, I think, here.
Yeah, well, good that you mentioned, because the sustainability is always the cost.
Yeah.
So who gonna pay that? Whose responsibility is to pay that? Are we as a consumer ready to pay the cost? Is the industry, the brand, the government? Who is putting the money on the table?
Great. Thank you, Sini and Tanzida. I hope to have some questions from the audience and from the online. There is at least one question I have heard. Let's take first from here. Any questions or comments from the audience from Turku? Yeah, there is one.
Working in a recycling field in a waste management company, I even got lots of new information, and it's quite shocking. And I think when we were talking about the change part being also with the consumers, I mean, this kind of information should be formatted in a way where and delivered already to young age kids, to schools and everything, so they really understand what is at stake. So I think great presentation.
Thank you. Same feeling. Actually, I looked at, this is my second time and still I got the new information. But one question, if not any here yet, your tips to the to how to make it more, how to make transition into circular economy of textiles, how to make it, how accelerate that.
So if thinking the company level, we need to go there. We need to understand the system and find the leverage points where we can make the biggest change. But me as a consumer, I have this silly hobby. I go to internet web pages of the companies and I visit all the sustainable pages, because they are brands are collecting lots of data where people are visiting in the page. So then they see there is some once born people going to the sustainable pages, and when I go to shop, I always ask. I ask where these are coming from. This is saying there is a sustainable label. Why it's there? So I also in the shops, I don't maybe intend to buy anything, but I just go and a little bit push. Do they know? And if they don't know, they at least get the signal that people are interested on the topic. And when I have lots of spare time, I write to the companies and ask, okay, you state this and this. What do you mean? And also if they don't have some information in the web page that I would like to read, then I ask like why you don't have that information there. And usually the companies are answering really nicely and they actually have the information. They just doesn't have it in the web page. So that has been very surprising.
Thank you, Sini. Great hobby you have. What about you, Tanzida?
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe we need to look. I'm adding the production perception here, that do we need actually that much production? So how can we minimize that production? Because the garments is not our very basic commodity. It's just I'll say that it's I don't get the right word, but it's like luxury things to some extent. So how can we be a little bit more conscious about that? I think brands can think about that, like, should we need that many production? Because every year, every month production is happening with, like, not only in Bangladesh, it's Vietnam, China, everywhere production is going on. So do we really need that many? How can we reverse the system? Maybe that can be a good process to think about.
Yeah,
it's already in place in a small scale, but we need to just put a large scale on that.
so more good quality and
Yeah,
and
good
less-
quality, long life
Yeah.
and
From volume to value.
value.
From
right.
volume to value.
Yes.
Thank you, Sini and Tansida. There was some questions from audience, from online as well, wasn't there?
I don't think we have time at the moment, so.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can answer on the chat then.
Sure.
So thank you so much. Great. And then we have Olga and Vera, researchers from Laurea. Please, Olga and Vera, stage is yours.
So good morning. Thank you, of course, for myself and also on behalf of my colleague, Olga Kurova, for having us here today. So I'm the project assistant for the Baltic Secondhand Project, and I'm also a PhD researcher. I'm looking at social transitions towards alternative, more sustainable economic systems. Olga, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
I'm Olga Gurova, and I'm a senior researcher at Laura University of Applied Sciences, and I'm doing research at Laura, and we are going to talk about one of those research right now.
Yeah, we can go on to the next slide. Great. So yeah, we're going to be taking a critical perspective on second-hand clothing today. We can go on to the next slide. So we're going to be answering this through two different questions. I'm going to be presenting the first question, and that's basically having a look at this idea that is second-hand as a product, as an operation, automatically sustainable, automatically responsible, and is it this automatic ticket to circularity and towards a circular economy? And then my colleague Olga will then answer the next question, which is looking at what opportunities consumers have in regarding to actually consuming textiles responsibly. So yeah, we can go on to the next slide. Great. Yeah, so the question is secondhand automatically a sustainable and responsible business model which supports the circular economy? Yeah, next slide. So obviously I'm going to be giving you a very basic, very normal breakdown of the pros and the cons to answer this question. I would say that it's not that straightforward. It is very complicated. As mentioned in the previous presentations, circular economy essentially does require a lot of cooperation. It's an entire holistic systematic change. Smaller changes, however, don't mean that they're not good changes, okay? But it's this idea that is a product by itself or an operation, is it standalone, actually sustainable, responsible, or circular? I think looking at secondhand textiles, it depends on how we're interpreting what circular economy actually is, what are its main goals and agendas, also what is the business perspective in regards to secondhand, what kind of expectations are being transferred from the linear economy to then these kind of circular operations which are actually put in place. So do they actually match? And then is secondhand essentially seen as an extra source of revenue for an organization, potentially also an extra source of consumption for consumers? Or is it actually used as a real alternative? So we are swapping purchases of new clothes for second-hand clothes. So is that intentional switch actually happening, or is it an added extra? So these are just some of the points to kind of keep in mind. Next slide, please. Great. So let's do the kind of good side, the positive side first, and let's see how second-hand kind of can be seen as supporting circular economy. So there is this perspective, or I would say maybe this argument usually used, a circular economy is actually an opportunity for business growth, okay? So this is a very positive take on what circular economy can actually mean, in the sense that it can balance both economic growth, business growth, profitability, and also ensure sustainability. So in English, we normally say it's this having your cake and eating it too. So you can do both, which sounds obviously great. In this kind of perspective, waste, and in this case, second-hand textiles, they are seen as being this untapped profit. So we are actually economically losing out in the linear economy from potential revenue, potential profit, potential growth. So it makes business sense, economic sense to actually tap into that profit. So this is definitely a view which is very favored by economists, of course, and also it's very favored by for-profit businesses, and often used to entice for-profit businesses to also actually add on circular operations to their models. Next slide, please. So one of the main, obviously, arguments is that, yeah, secondhand, obviously, we are reusing textiles. We're reusing our natural resources, which we have already kind of extracted. Water has been used, etc., etc. So massive, 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 massive pro. It is estimated that the environmental impact of reusing textiles is probably around 70 times lower than it would be to actually make that piece of clothing anew from scratch. So, of course, it's satisfying one of the big R's in circular economy, which is this idea of reuse. So for this reason, it is sometimes described as being almost this natural part of the circular economy, because we already have that product in play and we are just reusing it, making sure that it's not ending up in landfill. So we don't actually have to do anything extra to that textile. We don't have to send it back for redesign, etc., breaking it down to different materials. So it's kind of seen as a natural form of circularity. Of course, we can argue that to make textiles be more suitable for secondhand, we would have to put design aspects into place. But that's one of the arguments for that. It's a very easy, less complicated way of kind of entering into this idea of circularity. It's also very familiar. Actually, this disposable culture which we have is only around a few decades old. I would say that it's maybe going one generation back that we will be seeing that is this idea of reusing and repair also of clothes, handing clothes down in family, sharing, repairing was a pretty normal way of being, unless you were obviously very on the high end of being economically wealthy. But for many families, this was just a very normal way of doing it. So again, it's a familiar way. It's not too of a radical concept. It's an easy way to kind of go into circularity. Next slide, please. Great. So also that secondhand does provide this form of value shift, which is also needed in regards to actually kind of transitioning towards this circular economy. So secondhand, as mentioned, it's seen as waste, which actually has this capital value in weighting. So we are applying an economic value to secondhand, which does then alter how secondhand itself is seen in society at large. It's no longer regarded so much as waste. It does help to break down those negative conceptions of secondhand textiles, and it helps to make them seem more desirable, which is, again, it's great. It's shifting values towards this idea of reusing, and it's a good thing to reuse. Now, economic value, whether this is right or wrong, the reality is that it is often used as one of the highest forms of measurements in our societies or modern societies. Economic value, if we're applying economic value to a product or to an operation, that's usually like the top way of valuing anything. We can see this across salaries in different industries. What is actually needed, what is actually important, doesn't always reflect its economic value. And economic value is prioritized a lot in modern societies. So rightly or wrongly, adding economic value to secondhand does help to really raise its prestige in society. So it does help create this value shift. And I mean, arguably, it could potentially also alter how consumers see and treat clothes, in the sense that they potentially would be buying them as an investment if they know that they can potentially make money off those items at a later stage, and it becomes a very normal way of being. Consumers would hopefully then maybe make a little bit more of, they would take more time thinking long-term over short-term. What are you spending your money on? What is actually economically valuable? Then later on, when you're coming to sell it off, what's going to keep its value? So in that sense, yeah, it helps to shift values. Next slide, please. Also, secondhand clothing can be seen as being consumer-centric. It's a consumer-centric approach to sustainability. What this basically means is we're basically allowing consumers to kind of have that power in actually making the sustainable choices, and also driving sustainability, putting those sustainable demands actually onto companies themselves. Now, unlike some sustainable products or services, which obviously, understandably, they cost a lot more money, because to put those sustainable production methods, for example, in place requires more resources, more money. So whilst those products are good, it can essentially then end up being this form of privilege that only those people who have the economic means, the financial means to actually purchase these very expensive but sustainable products, it allows them to make those purchases. But for those who potentially do not have as much financial means, it might kind of take them out of the equation. Secondhand, because it does have an economic benefit to consumers as well. The majority of the time, secondhand is much cheaper to buy. And also if you can sell it, you can potentially make money off it. It does provide this more inclusive form of sustainability where everyone can pretty much play their part in making a more sustainable choice in their consumption habits. So in that sense, again, as we mentioned, circular economy is it's a circle with lots of webs, complete cooperation needed. It is important to kind of incorporate everyone into that. So yeah, secondhand in that sense, it does help to shift towards that mentality also. And yeah, it supports its transition towards a new normal. So where consumers are pretty much voluntarily making these choices, and this voluntary act is then also altering how their consumption habits and behavior kind of that would essentially change also. So in that regard, yeah, it also does help to move us towards circularity. Next slide, please. So very quickly on this, some takeaway points is, yeah, secondhand, it is an easy, familiar, maybe even for some, a natural way of maybe entering into the circular economy, providing a circular service, a circular product, yeah, which is more circular than what we already have in regards to buying new. It does promote value changes in regards to how we see waste, and also maybe how we measure new versus used clothes. So again, it does help to shift the idea of normality in regards to circularity and promote some, especially the reuse R in circular economy, which is obviously needed. It's inclusive, and also I would personally say that it acts as maybe a form of transition towards circular economy. So this is my opinion on this, that I don't think that secondhand textiles in itself as a standalone product is circular. I also don't think providing it as a standalone service or operation is automatically circular, that there needs to be intention behind it. But I would say that secondhand absolutely is a better alternative to buying new. And obviously, if we can transition towards this, that's great. So I see it as a transition towards circular economy, but not an automatic ticket to circular economy per se. Next slide, please. Yeah, so circular economy as well, there is this need, I mean, a big core of circular economy essentially is that we need to alter consumption and production habits. One of the main R's also in circular economy is reduce. Okay, so reduction of consumption and reduction of production, consumption, sorry, and reduction in, well, coming for production of consumption, but both. Okay, reducing consumption and production essentially. So if we are entering into this idea where circular economy products and services are driven by profit incentives, it's almost like doing business as usual. We're basically just taking the expectations, the goals, and the agendas that we have in a linear economy, and we're trying to apply it to something which is supposed to be circular. So yeah, it follows kind of business as usual model. If secondhand is added as an extra revenue, and it's not intentionally, so by the organization, it's not intentionally marketed as an alternative, that switch is not happening, especially if you're offering both. If you're an organization offering new clothes and you also have a secondhand section, but there is not that switch happening, it's actually only used as an extra source of revenue, then it's just increasing consumption. Essentially, that's all it's doing, and it's not altering production much whatsoever. And as a consumer also, you're just basically consuming double. So in regards to sustainability, especially sustainability in the fashion and textile industry, what is required is that we do need to really reevaluate consumption and production behavior, and also what we see as real needs. Next slide, please. So is secondhand clothing actually altering this idea of need? Does it automatically alter what we actually feel that we need? Now, on one hand, as I mentioned, yes, consumers can make this voluntary signal to companies that they're buying secondhand, and they want the company to essentially start providing secondhand clothing, for example. However, this comes the argument of whether we believe we're living in a market-based economy where it is that consumers are essentially driving the needs of, consumers are basically driving the supply of companies. So what consumers demand, then the market will essentially automatically try to supply. Or if we're living in a consumer capitalist economy. Now, the consumer capitalist economy is one which is very heavily loaded with marketing and advertisements. That is where these ideas of what we actually need are artificially placed into our minds. And the companies have a lot of power in actually driving our feelings towards what we feel like we actually need to buy, and along with obviously other social pressures. So this is the idea where you have hundreds of clothing items in your wardrobe and you still feel like you have nothing to wear. You physically do not actually need anything new to wear, but for some reason, whether it's advertisements or social pressure, you feel that you do. So does secondhand automatically alter this? I would personally say if there's no real intention put behind marketing strategies and this idea of actually using secondhand and also consuming less of it, then it's not really doing much to support that. Also, the fact that secondhand does have an economic benefit to consumers, which means that it is cheaper to purchase, it can actually just drive this double consumption of clothing. So for those who are buying new clothes as normal, then they might just go and purchase extra secondhand clothes because it's so cheap to do so. So why not? And even for those who primarily buy secondhand, are they actually saving money, or are they just buying more clothes? Are they just making their money go further? So are they actually just consuming double? So that is the unfortunate part of having an economic benefit with secondhand. Potentially, if we had everything at a much higher price, people would just consume less because we just couldn't afford to do so, or we think twice. And yeah, this basically boils down to the fact that is secondhand actually used as an extra or as an alternative. Next slide, please. Also, is secondhand automatically supporting these ideas of slow fashion? So for the fashion industry to be sustainable, we essentially need to operate by slow principles. So it's this idea of frugality, voluntary modesty. So you're rejecting the unnecessary. One way of doing this is, for example, having, I think it's called this like time capsule wardrobe, where you have a few central timeless items and then you basically switch those around and you basically try to maintain a wardrobe with maybe a few things added here and there. But this idea of slow fashion where we're not falling in with following trends, quick disposal, quick purchases. So does secondhand actually automatically support that? Again, I would say no. I think that secondhand can actually drive impulse purchases and even imperfect purchases, even if you don't think that item is perfect, because it's cheap, and you might also have less guilt in buying it because it's secondhand and you automatically assume it to be sustainable. We're more likely to purchase it without thinking too much about it. Next slide, please. And yeah, so if secondhand is motivated by this profitability hype, it essentially makes secondhand very vulnerable to any changes in its economic value. So whilst giving economic value to secondhand is pretty good for shifting value in mindsets in modern societies, if those expectations of profitability are not met by the organizations, by the businesses, it becomes very vulnerable to actually just being completely abandoned, if that is the agenda we're basically going with. So I would argue that expectations from the organization side, which basically means that this idea that you can continue growing endlessly, you can continue making profits endlessly, and every single player in the market is able to do so. These are linear economic expectations and goals, and we're trying to apply to something which is supposed to be sustainable and circular. And simultaneously, consumers' expectations of how much we can purchase, how much we can have, our range of availability, and those also need to be altered. There definitely has to be this level of modesty and level of decreasing actual demand and supply, which has to happen simultaneously. In many cases, it's volume and frequency, which is the real enemy of anything. You can make a product extremely sustainable, but if its volume and its frequency rises, its dangers of being environmentally and socially negative also rises dramatically. So for me, I would say that volume and frequency of production and consumption is the absolute main enemy. And in an economy where we are completely dependent on growth, driven by growth, and of course, organizations are operating by those rules and by these expectations that have been given to them. They're operating the same way that consumers are as well. Those need to really be altered. So yeah, waste, and in this case, secondhand, it needs to be seen as more than profit. Next slide, please. Yeah, so takeaway points for this is secondhand as a goal to grow and expand will continue to fuel on sustainability. Secondhand really needs to be applied through principles of slow fashion, and the agenda for actually applying secondhand in the first place needs to be to actually remove the new with this goal of that everything you're basically kind of selling and consuming would be secondhand, that we're trying to use it as an alternative to versus extra. And yeah, this obviously requires not just reevaluating needs and expectations, but it also requires quite a heavy systematic change in the environment that we're actually playing in. Because as much as we talk about consumption and production needs to get, well, consumption especially needing to be reduced, in a growth dependence economy, they butt heads. Okay, so it's interesting because normally you see these two and they don't really fit in together. If we're expected to continue to grow a reduction in consumption, they don't go very well together. So we do actually have to have a real look at how to transfer into a circular economy, which doesn't maybe have such high expectations on this. So yeah, secondhand needs to be an intentional alternative, not just an added extra. Next slide, please. Yep, so basically what I pretty much just went through is that circular economy needs circular values, goals, and expectations. So any product or service alone will not be circular unless those things are taken into consideration and we integrate ourselves into what that role for us is in the circular economy. So we can't really, it's very difficult to do it by yourself. Volume and frequency are the core on sustainability. So this idea to continue to need to grow, to make profit, etc., need to consume, need to produce is pretty much at the heart of sustainability in any case. And secondhand, I do think is a viable solution. It's definitely an easy way to start this transition, but standalone, it's not enough. And yeah, circularity is more than one product. It requires systematic change. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Apologies if I went through that a little bit quickly, but I'm not sure if that's questions now or if Olga will then present the next section. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vera, and we will continue with Olga right away.
Thank you. And please, next slide. My question is, what opportunities do consumers have to consume textiles on the one hand and at the same time to take care of the planet? So that's an intriguing question. Thanks, Hannah, for that. Next slide. And so first, that's the plan of the presentation. So first, I'll try to answer the question. Well, I answered the question of what terms I use to describe consumption with the planet in mind. And then I will proceed to the question of what's efficiency-based consumption, what is efficiency-based consumption, and after that, I will talk more about the results of our research, about our findings related to practices of efficiency-based consumption, and then I will criticize that a little bit, looking at the bits of the interviews. And I will touch a lot of things that we have already talked about. Next slide. So, of course, we know lots of terms that explain how consumers can consume with the planet in mind. And some of the concepts, they are more about the cognitive aspects. And then we can talk about eco-conscious consumption or conscious consumption. Then some of the terms, they are more emphasizing the environmental aspects. And then we can talk about green consumption or eco-friendly consumption or environmental consumption. Then other concepts, they are more about rights, animal rights, for example, or labor rights. And then we can talk about ethical consumption. And there are also umbrella terms such as sustainable consumption that sort of unites different aspects. But then the next slide, please. Then the most recent term that I see that's used quite a lot is efficiency-driven consumption. And that's the term that tries to place emphasis on the quantity of what we consume. And the sufficiency-driven approach advocates changing consumer lifestyle by satisfying needs rather than promoting wants and fast fashion. And the next slide. So we are talking about needs versus wants, and one of the categories that is close to sufficiency and sufficiency-driven consumption is the so-called consumption corridors. And what is consumption corridors? And consumption corridors describes that corridor between the minimum of consumption and minimum of consumption standards that provide every individual in the society with ability to live a good life on the one hand, but also the maximum consumption standards that keep individuals from consuming in quantities or ways that hurt others' chances to do the same. So basically, that consumption corridors assume, on the one hand, pursuing of good life, but on the other hand, we have to think about the justice and also the planetary boundaries. What's interesting about that term is that since it's a corridor, then it's also a spectrum, so to say. So it can be quite inclusive, and there are different levels that are assumed. But of course, there are plenty of questions related to that concept. So what is need actually, and what is want? How are they different in different contexts, in different societies? Who defines that? And what actually it means on practices if we try to be sufficient. So we decided to look at the practices of consumers. Next slide, please. And to try to see what does sufficient consumption means, or sufficiency-driven consumption means, if we look at the practices, at consumers' practices. And we made 29 interviews with consumers in Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Sweden. They were adults who are living across the countries. That's important. So it's not just the dwellers of the capitals of the countries, but also people who are living across in some remote areas. Part of the interviews were collected by the members of our project, and also part of the interviews were collected by the Finnish research company Kraust. Next slide, please. And so if we look at what sufficiency-driven consumption is, and I just looked at the literature, and scholars identified 4 ways of being sufficient. So the first one is absolute reduction, and that's basically about just cutting down your consumption. So just buy less. So to reduce amount of consumption. That's the absolute reduction. Then the second way of being sufficiency-driven is so-called modal shifts. A little bit interesting way of defining it, but basically it's about different materials, and we are shifting to a consumption of less resource-intensive materials. Then the third way is products longevity, and that includes various practices of extending life cycle of clothing or lifespan of clothing. And then the last way is sharing practices. So that's basically about sharing, swapping, and so on and so forth. And I'll go deeper into all of those practices, how we see them in the interviews with the consumers. Next slide, please. So the absolute reduction. And when I looked at the interviews, there are plenty of conversations about needs-based consumption, that consumers are really talking about switching from pleasure, consumption as pleasure, to consumption from the point of view of needs. They are also speaking about buying less. For instance, they have cooling off period, which means that if they want to buy something, then they give themselves time to sort of not to buy it immediately, but to wait a little bit, or they have sometimes no shopping breaks. So if just, they spend too much, and then, they're making breaks of no shopping for some time, or they're trying to reduce impulse purchases. And that's really a big issue. In our interviews, we could see that the consumers actually shop impulse, like there's plenty of impulse shopping going on. Then also another way is avoiding shopping for pleasure and shopping for necessity instead of that, or avoiding fashion trends, because when you're following shopping trends, fashion trends, you're kind of constantly in that cycle. And if you are avoiding them, then you're kind of, it's a way to reduce your consumption. So the next slide. So the modal shifts that I mentioned. So when we are talking about those modal shifts, we're talking about choosing better materials, which means that, for instance, we are choosing materials which don't have plastic, or they're biodegradable materials, or some other better materials. Consumers are also valuing quality over quantity. So for instance, they're ready to pay more for more expensive sustainable goods, circular goods, or consumers are choosing domestic brands and products and they are trying to avoid the questionable brands. And there are plenty of conversations going on right now. The main like problematic company that is mentioned is Shein, the Chinese companies, Shein and Temu. And then also avoiding buying cheap disposable clothes. That's another way of pursuing that model shift. Next slide, please. So the next way to be sufficiency oriented is to think about product longevity, and there are plenty of practices related to that. For instance, using clothes for as long as possible, or building capsule wardrobe, and that's when you're trying to build your wardrobe based. So you're using some universal clothing which match with each other, and then you can mix them and wear with each other. And this is the capsule. And then consumers also say about rotating wardrobe, and that's quite interesting because there are different ways of doing that. For instance, if you buy a new thing, then you have to put it on a hanger, and then when you open your wardrobe, you see that thing, and then you remember about that, and then you start wearing that. And there is plenty of conversations going on about how important it's actually to wear, because people are really annoyed when they buy something and then they don't use. So they're really kind of trying to put an effort into wearing things, and there are different ways of how to actually push themselves to do that. Then the other practices, they relate to repairing and adjusting clothes, or reconsidering aesthetics of clothes. And Vera already mentioned that the aesthetics of second-hand clothes is different than the aesthetics of the new clothes. But then we see that there is the acceptance of that faulty items. Of course, there is a question whether that the consumption is still fueled, but I'll proceed to that later. Then the last one is reusing clothes as objects with different functions. And here we see, for instance, like everyday clothes, they're becoming clothes for cottages, or they might become even mops or something like that. And the next slide, please. Then the other set of practices relates to sharing practices. And that's when consumers try not to throw clothes to trash, and they're trying to donate clothing to charities, or renting them out, or they shop at the flea markets or at secondhand shops, and that's quite a common practice. Or they're selling used clothes, and then some of the consumers, they're doing both shopping and selling at secondhand markets, but some of them, they're just doing one thing. For instance, they don't sell because selling is just too time consuming, too difficult. But then some of them instead just selling because they don't like to use wearing other people's clothes, or there are some hygienic reasons or some other reasons why they avoid doing that. But then the next practice is handing down or sharing clothes with family members, or sharing clothes with friends. This is something that is also quite typical in the Finnish families, especially among younger people. And swapping is the last one. So those are the sharing practices. So next slide. So as you can see, consumers already are doing a lot of things. If we look at the interviews of trying to be sufficient, or trying to be what we are calling sufficiency driven. And here there are takeaways points of how to be sufficient for consumers. So adopt a needs-based approach, to avoid impulse purchases, to wear clothes for as long as possible, to repair and maintain them, to build a capsule wardrobe, or to follow timeless style, to opt for second-hand and rental option as an alternative to new things, then to support sustainable brands, and avoid fast fashion companies associated with harm towards the planet and human beings. Then to value quality over quantity, and to find creative ways to reuse and recycle clothing instead of discarding old clothes. Next slide, please. So there are plenty of things that consumers are already doing, but then the consumption, if you look deeper into interviews, can be also problematic. And companies are blamed for greenwashing constantly, but what about the consumers? So shall they share some of the burden of that as well? Because if you look deeply into the practices, then we can see that consumers are not necessarily consistent in their behavioral patterns, or they can recognize the problem, but they don't act. And this is, one of the biggest problems, because there are plenty of narratives when consumers actually do understand what's going on. Quite a few of them watched documentaries, and quite a few of them can, just you mentioned that that those pictures that impressed you from Tanzida's and Sini's presentation, and actually consumers have seen them, so they have seen those, they have watched those movies, and there's plenty of conversations, plenty of moralizing over own behavior, but at the same time they're still behaving in a way that's it's more convenient to them, is more normal to them, or that brings them pleasure, and so on and so forth. So then also by choosing one area, for instance, to be sustainable, like to use secondhand, but they just use it as a token for their behavior in general, because overall they don't reduce their consumption, so they still, try spend a lot, and the volume of consumption grows. Next slide, please. And actually, all of those things, like all of those problems of consumption, they are known in consumption studies that, consumers say they support sustainability, but they don't act, or they don't act enough, or they act controversially. And the concepts that I use to explain that is attitude behavior gap or value action gap. So that's exactly about, when we are saying one thing, but then we're acting in a different way. Or there is also the rebound effect. And that's about what Vera mentioned, that, for instance, secondhand is cheaper. So we have more money, so we start buying more instead of buying less. So in that sense, we are trying to do something good, but that good actually brings the bad consequences, because still, we are spending more, and we are getting more volume of clothing, and then there is that whole cycle, and there is no way out of that. So that's the rebound effect, and that we see in the secondhand consumption a lot. Next slide, please. And here you see some quotes from the interviews, and you'll see some of the examples of what we were talking about earlier. So the first quote: I've sometimes bought them secondhand clothes as a kind of impulse purchase. That here's the shiny silver fabric, costs only €5, I buy it. So that's one of the examples. Secondhand is quite often bought as an impulse purchase, and there is a very strong reason for that, because people, when they're going to secondhand shops, they don't really know what is out there. They don't really know the assortment, and they usually just so that's why the impulse shopping is so much a thing within the secondhand consumption, because you see something that you like, and then you just buy it, and then here we go, impulse purchase. The next slide, no, the next quote: I buy at least once a month. When I notice that I've spent quite a lot of money on clothes, I might be like, now I don't buy even during this month, or I don't buy for 6 months or so, but I usually do it when it's those flea market visits, when it is an entertainment with friends. So always something is bought. So in that sense, that's the same. She's on the one hand trying to be actually a bit more sufficient. So she's trying to regulate her consumption, that interviewee, that, she feels when she feels that she's spending a lot, she's trying to make those breaks. But at the same time, secondhand is kind of exclusion from that. So when she's going there, and she's going there with friends, and this is also something that is very typical, especially for the younger people, that they're hanging out at the secondhand stores, and then something has to be bought. So when she sees something, something is bought, and then again we are increasing the volume of consumption with that. So the next,
you have
slide.
1 more minute to go.
Yeah, I'm about to finish. I often feel like I found something secondhand that I kind of like. I automatically feel like I have to get it, because it's the only chance. And if it doesn't fit 100% like you want it, you can maybe buy it anyway, and then you never wear it because it doesn't fit you. That's very problem for me. But then you can sell it again, no, give it to charity. So I think it's just an extra cycle. So basically that's again another example of how you are getting the secondhand consumers into the cycle, that they might buy, but because they cannot return, things such as sitting in their wardrobe, and the volume is growing. Next slide. There is another example of someone who is saying that she favors the domestic brands, but on the one hand, she's buying Chinese brands as well. So I like to favor domestic brands because I know that they are genuinely made here in our country, and so on and so forth. But then, do you buy Chinese brands? Let's just say that they are also used. The reason I ordered this dress from China is that I can't find any dresses or clothes like that, different, colorful, and so on and so forth. So basically here you also say that there are the controversies within the consumer behavior. And the next slide. So what the consumers can do to become more sustainable and still consume. Here are our conclusion. So don't just say, act. Avoid using sustainability as a token. Then the next one, acknowledge limitations of own consumption patterns. And the last one, and the most important one, is reduce consumption. So that's all. Last slide. Thank you very much. And yeah, the last slide, the next slide. Yeah, thank you very much. And if you are interested in what we are doing, just don't hesitate to contact us. We have plenty of research going on right now. That's just a tiny bit of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga and Veera. Every coin has two sides. We can see it from here also, your presentation. Thank you very much. You really much answering to those questions that I was asking you like months ago. A great presentation, both of you. Any questions from the audience? I saw that there is one question on chat, so if you can please answer it to that on the chat, Olga and Veera. But any questions or comments from the audience from Turku? There is one question, Minna.
Thank you very much for both of your presentations, and very interested in about the circular economy, especially the second-hand. One question for Veera, please. Could you mention one of the best companies that you have come up with that are making this in a profitable way?
No, really great question. I mean, to be honest, it's definitely very complicated because this is again from my research side of what I do for my PhD, and it is maybe as a bit of an unpopular opinion, but here you go. I'll answer the question. But I don't personally think that organizations or in general the economies that we're operating in at the moment, which are growth driven, which means that we require growth on a yearly basis. Otherwise, we obviously hit a recession. So growth normally means increased production, increased consumption in whatever industry we're talking about. I don't think that it's going to foster real sustainable and let's say real circular business models if we continue to operate in this kind of mentality where growth is at the center of everything. Simultaneous is very difficult for, I think, for organizations to get it, businesses to get it right at the moment, because this is the field they're operating in. For them to exist, they do need to make profit, they need to make revenue. So they are not in any way, I don't think the business model itself is not the enemy, but I would say that it's this entire idea of us being completely reliant and heavily reliant on economic growth, which fuels this want for consumption and production to continue. In regards to what you mentioned, I mean, we had a really great keynote speaker yesterday, actually at our project cross-border workshop. It's a Dutch circular platform, repair circular platform, Mended. I would say that it's very, definitely check them out. They're very interesting. They basically are almost this kind of middleman for providing repair services. They're kind of connecting those who do tailoring with textile companies and then also consumers, and they're kind of providing all those like logistics for them so that that is basically happening with certain brands. But of course, that's also then the consumption part of it, which is still there, but at least repair is happening. And I don't think one organization can take the entire burden of being completely circular. It basically needs a lot of different companies, industry sectors, policymakers, and consumers kind of working together on it. So I'm sorry that I don't have a direct answer. I don't have this utopian model, unfortunately.
Thank you very much for that one, because I watched it yesterday driving to Turku. So the Baltic second-hand webinar.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes. So I saw the company, and then kind of I put it on my to-do list, but it's been a little bit hectic here in Turku. I will think when I get back home too.
And let me know what you think, obviously.
Thank you very much. He made an impression on that one.
Yeah.
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you, Minna, for your question, and thank you very much, Veera, for answering that clearly. Next presentation will be my colleague Pia Nurmi, also giving insights of what we have done in Telavalue project. So Pia, floor is yours. You can maybe switch yourself if you, yeah.
Thank you so much. So great to be here. And where can I see the online audience? Where is the camera? Yeah, so nice to meet you also, online people. So yes, my name is Pia Nurmi. I come from Turku University of Applied Sciences, and it was really great to hear also the earlier presentations. I will talk about, on a very, to put it in one word, the research findings from Telavalue project from Telaketju network. The key maybe here is to understand that the results I'm presenting here, they are more supporting companies, those companies who want to be at the forefront. So the previous research and presentation was given more from the research made by Baltic 2Hand on the consumer perspectives. We have also looked at consumer perspectives, but this is more like from the company point of view. Now that the companies also want to make a systemic change, and they want to try to develop these business models, and we have been sort of helping them. The key thing maybe I also want to emphasize here is that like I'm really honored to be here, and you are all making a change. So the whole RENET network is making a change, and we can all, as wherever we are working, if we are students or companies or researchers or development agencies, we can make a change. And finally, when I finalize my presentation today, I will also come to the conclusion that we need to decrease consumption. So sort of talking about the same topic here. But let me first tell you a little bit what my little presentation here is all about. So I will first give you a little bit of insight of the background of this research. Then I will go through some research results. Then we have a summary of the research findings that we call multi-factor study. And then just the final words. So, Tela value, the background for that, actually, I could first show this, this slide. So this is a network of researchers and companies and other organizations that has already been working for 10 years to improve the circular economy of textiles. And as you can see, there is a little circle. So Baltic 2Hand is also part of this continuum. Meaning that it was with Olga and her colleagues that we started. I'm not working in Baltic 2Hand, but I was helping that project to give birth to that project. So all of the experience we have had during the 10 years on circular economy textiles, it's also we felt it and knew it back 2-3 years ago that there really needs to be more research and development on secondhand, all kinds of business models extending the life cycle. So that is also why I was asked to come here to talk about the research experience on why the expansion of life cycle is important. And there are these few pictures. I was super happy to see the earlier presentation with pictures of emphasizing also visually second-hand market. These are some pictures we have taken with a visual agency company a few years ago. Sort of that these pictures also try to emphasize the need for extending the life cycle of textiles. Because before this, at least us and many of the colleagues internationally also, back then, when we were talking about circular economy textiles, there were always only fibers or piles of textiles. There are piles of textiles, as we saw from Sini's presentation, but we can also make a change with the pictures. Well, that was also sort of the starting point for the research. So back in Telaketju 2 project, we were looking at ways to expand, ways to make research that focuses on how to make the life cycles longer. Then we have also looked at the product of the service models, but that's one of the parts of the continuum. But now, during the past 2 years, we've had a really nice opportunity to work with TelaValue project, which has a lot of objectives. But the objective I'm talking about here, we wanted to obtain knowledge or competence for implementation of these new business models. These new business models meaning those that lengthen the life cycle. So of course, recycling and resource efficiency and all of that, they are business models also, but we wanted to find research knowledge on how to implement. And the implementation here means that those companies that want to make the systemic change, how can we help them? We started looking at the topic with researchers from our university, VTT, and Lab University of Applied Sciences, of course with the companies also, but mostly with the research organizations. That now that we are looking at those business models that lengthen the life cycle, there are at least these aspects that we need to take care of or look into. Is the social aspects, environmental aspects, consumer, which we heard a lot earlier also the economical aspects, data and design. And these research results are almost ready. Most of them are ready. So for example, Erika here. Yeah, my dear colleague who was also organizing this event. So the research findings, I will just show them quickly, but if you want to discuss with Erika, those parts of the research are already ready, and all of these aspects, the 6 aspects, results on those will be published. If not ready already, they will be published in 1 or 2 months. All openly accessible in telaketju.fi webpage. Back 2 years ago, when we started doing this research, we were quite optimistic or sort of a little bit naive also maybe. We were hoping that we can put all of these things together, all of these aspects together, and create sort of a little machine or a little, I don't know, sort of helper for companies that they can put their business models in this machine and it will shoot out the environmental, social, all of these results. But these topics are so diverse and difficult, so we were not able to do that little special machine helping. But what we have been able to do is to provide companies, but of course other organizations, whoever is wanting these results, sort of tools and knowledge on these aspects. And the first one of these 6 aspects, just like I said, Erika Heinonen here, she's done that part of the studies, and you can find all of this freely accessible on Telaketju webpage. What I wanted to show here in my short presentation is that the final result is sort of like a checklist or stages of social aspects in these new business models that companies or other organizations can use. Now you have a good chance here, everyone here present, you can grab Erika's sleeve and talk more about this. The other aspect we looked into was the environmental aspect. And this was done by my dear colleague Erika Raitala and Mitja Hokkanen also. Here, the thing is that we looked or sort of sliced down these business models and looked at the environmental aspects with the logistics, with warehousing, washing, and all of that, and looked into the environmental aspects of those. And there also the end result already found on the Telaki2 webpage is a full list of those aspects and sort of the like how you can when you have you have the transport that you have to I don't know, you do your washing in a certain way. How can you evaluate that? So all of these are freely accessible also. And the third one done by our university, it was our master level student Mariana, who looked at the economic aspects, but not the value creation as such, but more like the pricing and cost structure of these models. And she started looking at that with a literature review. And we were a little bit surprised to find out that you always sort of think that the economic aspect, those are taken care of. But that's not the case, like with the pricing and cost structure and profitability. Those are also under studied aspects. And she also created sort of, this is also accessible. So all of this is 6 aspects. Most of them can also already be found on the webpage, and soon all of them. So that's what we created in this research project, sort of to help the forerunner companies or those companies or other organizations that want to in this current market situation to try to make the systemic change and so that they can calculate the social benefits and environmental benefits, and also look into the economic benefits and all of that. But in addition to that, after knowing the researchers and of course discussing with the companies and other organizations, we have known the researchers for the whole of the Tela value for 2 years, and already before that. So there is a lot of trust and I would like to say common understanding of the dilemma, which is because that is also missing a lot in today's world, that we come from so different backgrounds and we are focusing on what we are doing. So we are not sharing. But with these researchers, we have been able to build a trust and sort of a common understanding of the topic. And so with all of these separate little parts that I explained earlier, we were able to combine our knowledge on that. And we are now in the process of writing what we call multi-factor study on these business models. And as the multi-factor study, it's not in full, you can't read it yet, you can read it before summertime. But I would like to give you an insight of the 5 findings that with these researchers looking at the consumers, data, design, economic aspects, environment and social aspects, we've come up with together. And they are very much in line what we've heard before today. So the first finding in this summary is that this topic of second-hand and the other business models that lengthen the life cycle, it's really, really wide and also important. And we we need research done in the separate alleys, and also we need to create that little, I don't know, some machine that helps. It's not a machine, but we need to create a common understanding, combining these different points of view. We need to make the change together, and that's why I'm really happy that you have this RENET network and Baltic Secondhand Days going on. We need to do that change together as consumers, as companies, and as other organizations, and also we need the legislation and the sort of that side of the story. We need to decrease consumption. There is no going away from that. I think the earlier presentations were really also emphasizing that. And still we need to create a world with enough work and well-being for all. So this is a really tricky part, but there is no going away from that. Then there is the, how to say it in English, that chicken egg problem, like what comes first and what is the starting point of the change. And like I said, we need to do the change together, but still, if you really think about it, the consumers do have a leading role with creating the change. And I think Baltic Secondhand, for example, is making a good progress in that, trying to help also the consumers to work on that. And then the final finding, sort of emphasizing what I call here in this presentation now the little machine. So we need really thorough understanding of all of these aspects, and we need to develop those separately, but also try to put all the understanding together. So to finalize, the question raised at me for this presentation was that product life extension, why is it important? It is because we need to help the companies, help the other organizations to make the systemic change. We need to help the consumers to find better solutions. And we need all of this, the drive towards a more sustainable world. So thank you a lot. And it was really nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. And we had a really privilege to be here with the 6 great experts presenting their ideas and their research findings. I like to say thank you for presenters and thank you for the audience online and also here in Turku. All these presenters and all these slides and information were recorded and it will be published in our webpage. So you will find all there. So you can later listen to it that also. We will continue in this Zoom 1 o'clock afternoon, but we will change the language into Finnish. So please, those who can follow us also in a different language, please join us afternoon, but other who will now go for a lunch maybe. So I will thank you all and please follow Baltic Secondhand and also RENET Network. Thank you everybody and have a nice lunchtime.